It was just past midnight in the Hollywood Hills. The stars were scattered like diamonds above Keanu Reeves's quiet estate. Most of the staff had gone home, the lights in the vast mansion dimmed, and the world outside was silent. But from one room, hidden away at the far end of the guest wing, came the muffled sound of someone crying. Keanu, known to his friends and fans as a humble, deeply empathetic soul, had just returned from a long day of filming. He had every reason to collapse into bed, forget the world, and retreat into his well-earned rest. But as he passed the hallway leading to the staff quarters, a heartbreaking sound stopped him in his tracks. It was soft, almost like a whisper, but unmistakably, someone was in pain. Little did anyone know that one small moment would lead to an act of kindness so profound, so unexpected, that it would leave every single member of Keanu's household in awe, and eventually the world watching in disbelief. What Keanu did next wasn't a publicity stunt. It wasn't a performance. It was something far more real, something that came straight from the heart. And it all began with a cry in the night. Chapter 1. The Quiet Hero of Hollywood. To understand why what Keanu did mattered so much, you have to know a little about the man himself. Keanu Reeves isn't like most A-list celebrities. He doesn't travel with an entourage. He doesn't flaunt his wealth. He's been spotted riding the subway, offering his seat to strangers, and walking the streets like any other person. Despite his enormous success in Hollywood, from The Matrix to John Wick, he remains one of the most grounded figures in the industry. His staff often described him as quietly kind. He greeted everyone, from the chef to the gardener, with the same level of respect. He remembered birthdays, sent handwritten thank you notes, and always offered to help with small tasks. But even with all that, no one expected what would happen that night. You see, the housekeeper, Maria, was more than just another employee to Keanu. She had worked in the Reeves household for almost 7 years. A kind-hearted woman in her 50s, Maria had become like family to the staff. Always smiling, always humming as she worked, she never spoke much about her personal life. But that night, her world had quietly fallen apart, and Keanu, by fate or intuition, was about to find out. Chapter 2. The Woman Behind the Uniform. Maria Rodriguez had emigrated from El Salvador over 2 decades ago. Life hadn't been easy for her. She had raised 2 children on her own, juggled multiple jobs, and had endured more than her fair share of loss. But she had never lost her sense of dignity. To the staff, she was a rock, steadfast, generous, and full of warmth. When she first got the job at Keanu's estate, she treated it like a miracle. She took immense pride in her work, and it showed. The rooms she cleaned sparkled, and the beds she made were tucked with military precision. But what really set her apart was her ability to make everyone around her feel cared for. She would bring homemade pupusas for the groundskeeper, offer tea to the night security, and even quietly leave encouraging notes in the laundry room. So when Keanu heard her crying behind the closed door of her modest room, it was deeply unsettling. This was not the Maria anyone knew, and that was why he didn't hesitate. Still in his worn leather jacket, with exhaustion weighing down his shoulders, Keanu gently knocked on her door. Chapter 3. The Knock at the Door. Maria startled at the knock. She quickly wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. No one was supposed to hear her. She had cried quietly, thinking the massive house had already gone to sleep. But when she opened the door, there he was, Keanu Reeves, standing like a concerned neighbor rather than one of the most famous actors in the world. He looked at her gently, without judgment, his brows furrowed just slightly in worry. "Maria, I heard something. Are you okay?" he asked softly. Maria's instinct was to deflect. "I'm fine, Mr. Reeves," she said, trying to force a smile. "Just tired, that's all." But Keanu didn't buy it. He took a small step forward, his voice even quieter now. "You've worked for me for years. You've taken care of this house, of all of us. Please let me do the same for you." At those words, Maria's composure broke. She covered her face with her hands and wept silently, shoulders trembling. Keanu didn't say another word. He simply walked in, sat beside her on the modest couch in her room, and let her cry. And in that small room, the man the world saw as an action hero became something even greater, a listener. Chapter 4. The Story She Never Shared. Maria had been keeping a secret. Her youngest son, Mateo, had been in a serious accident back in El Salvador. He had been riding home from his job on a scooter when he was hit by a truck. His leg was badly injured, and the local hospital lacked the equipment needed to perform a necessary surgery. The doctors gave her a deadline. Either she could raise the $17,000 needed for treatment in San Salvador, or Mateo risked losing his leg. Maria had already sent everything she could. Her savings, her extra earnings, even a small loan from a friend. But she was still $9,000 short, and time was running out. "I don't want to burden anyone," she told Keanu between sobs. "This is my problem. I just didn't know where else to go." Keanu sat in silence for a long moment. Not the silence of someone unsure, but the silence of someone thinking deeply. Then he said something that would mark the beginning of a truly unforgettable series of events. "Maria, it's not your problem anymore. It's ours now." Chapter 5. An Unforgettable Morning. By the next morning, the mood inside Keanu's estate had shifted. It wasn't just the staff who noticed. The chef noticed that Keanu asked for breakfast to be delivered to Maria's room. The gardener saw Keanu personally escorting a smiling Maria through the back gardens. The personal assistant, who normally arranged press tours and filming logistics, was instead helping Keanu make an international wire transfer. Before noon that day, the money for Mateo's surgery had been sent. But Keanu didn't stop there. He called a contact he had met years ago while filming in Central America, a doctor involved with the charity providing medical aid in El Salvador. Keanu arranged for Mateo to be moved to a private clinic and personally covered all post-op costs, including rehab, lodging, and nutrition. And when Maria offered to pay him back, Keanu simply shook his head. "This isn't charity," he said. "This is family." Chapter 6. The Ripple Effect. Keanu's actions didn't go unnoticed, but it wasn't because he told anyone. In fact, Keanu made it clear to his assistant, "No press, no photos. This stays between us." But the staff, they couldn't help it. Word spread among them like wildfire. First, the security team found out, then the chef, then the rest of the cleaning crew. Each of them began to see Keanu in a new light, not as just a decent boss, but as someone deeply, genuinely invested in the lives of those around him. And something beautiful began to happen. Inspired by Keanu's example, other members of the staff began looking out for one another more. The gardener brought snacks for the night crew. The chef started teaching the younger housekeepers how to cook simple, affordable meals. Maria's strength, restored by Keanu's compassion, became a rallying point for the household. Kindness, it turned out, was contagious. And the house in the Hollywood Hills? It became more than just a mansion. It became a home. Chapter 7. A Quiet Gesture Becomes a Movement. Days passed, and Mateo's condition steadily improved. The private clinic in San Salvador was staffed with caring professionals who now saw Mateo not just as a patient, but as a young man whose life had been touched by a stranger thousands of miles away. Maria updated Keanu daily, and each time she spoke, it was with a light in her eyes that hadn't been there in years. But it wasn't just her spirit that had changed. Keanu never once boasted. He never expected praise. But his quiet act of generosity had struck a chord with everyone who worked under his roof. The usually quiet service staff began initiating conversations, sharing stories, asking each other about their families, checking in. Keanu had given more than just money. He had reminded everyone that they mattered, and that ripple effect was beginning to move beyond his estate. Chapter 8. The Gift That Couldn't Be Bought. A week later, Maria approached Keanu with a small wooden box in her hands. "I know you don't want anything in return," she said, "but this is from my family. It's all we can give, but it's from the heart." Inside the box was a hand-carved figurine, a small sculpture of a guardian angel. It had been made by her uncle back home, who carved religious icons from reclaimed wood. The angel had Mateo's name carved into the base. Keanu held it carefully, running his fingers along the smooth edges. "It's beautiful," he said sincerely. "I'll keep it close." That figurine found a place of honor on the bookshelf in his private study, nestled between worn philosophy books and old movie scripts. Visitors who saw it never asked about it, but Keanu would often glance at it during moments of reflection, remembering the night he heard that soft cry in the dark. Chapter 9. Whispers Beyond the Walls. Despite Keanu's desire to keep things private, word of what he had done for Maria eventually found its way beyond the estate. A young assistant had mentioned it, offhandedly and anonymously, on a Reddit thread about celebrities being kind behind the scenes. "I work at a celebrity estate," the post read. "One night, the housekeeper broke down. The boss, who I won't name, sat with her for hours and then paid for her son's life-saving surgery. He told us, 'It's not charity, it's family.' I've never seen anything like it." The post went viral. Speculation swirled. People guessed who it might be, and while no name was officially confirmed, many suspected it was Keanu. Fans weren't surprised. "Sounds like something he'd do," one commenter wrote. "That man's heart is bigger than his filmography." Keanu said nothing. He let the world speculate. For him, the real reward wasn't internet praise. It was the knowledge that Maria had slept peacefully that week for the first time in years. Chapter 10. An Unexpected Visitor. One late afternoon, about 3 weeks after the night Maria had cried, the front gate buzzed with an unexpected visitor. It was Mateo. He had made the trip to California after his final rehabilitation session. With the help of Keanu's team, his visa had been expedited and his travel arranged. He walked, yes, walked up the stone path toward the main house with a slight limp and eyes full of emotion. Maria was in the kitchen when the door opened. She turned, confused, then froze. Tears welled up instantly as she dropped the dish rag and ran into her son's arms. The entire kitchen staff stood in silence, stunned at the sight of the young man who just weeks ago had been at risk of losing a limb. Keanu came into the room moments later, his hands in his pockets, wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans. Mateo broke the hug with his mother and walked up to him. "Senor Reeves," he said in accented English, "I don't have the words. You saved my life." Keanu shook his head. "I didn't save your life, Mateo. I just did what anyone would do for someone they care about." The two embraced, and for the first time since Keanu had bought that house, the entire staff applauded. Not for an actor, but for a man who had lived his values when it mattered most. Chapter 11. A Dinner Like No Other. That weekend, something extraordinary happened at the Reeves estate, something that had never occurred before. Keanu decided to host a dinner, not for executives, not for movie stars, but for his staff. He called it the family table. Instead of chefs preparing the meal alone, Keanu asked each member of the household to bring a dish that reminded them of home. Maria made her legendary pupusas. The gardener brought a spicy mole from Puebla. The driver contributed his grandmother's rice pilaf from Lebanon. Even Keanu, despite his modest cooking skills, insisted on making a simple pasta dish his late mother used to prepare when he was a boy in Toronto. The large outdoor table was covered in mismatched plates, and string lights twinkled above. Everyone gathered: servers, assistants, gardeners, security personnel. There was no hierarchy that night, only laughter, food, and stories. When it was Maria's turn to speak, she stood and held a glass in her hand, her voice trembling slightly. "There is no paycheck big enough to pay for what you've done, Mr. Reeves," she said. "You didn't just save my son. You gave me my soul back, and for that you will always be my family." The table fell silent, overcome with emotion, and then Keanu stood up, holding his own glass. "To Maria," he said, "and to all of you, for being the real heart of this home." They toasted, and no one who was there that night ever forgot it. Chapter 12. Echoes from the Past. Later that week, Keanu sat alone in his study, staring at the small guardian angel figurine Maria had given him. His thoughts drifted, not to movies or contracts, but to his own mother. She had passed away years earlier, after a long and difficult illness. Keanu had cared for her tirelessly during her final months, flying back and forth between film sets and hospitals. The memory of her voice, her strength, and her quiet resilience lingered in his mind every day. It was his mother who had taught him to listen, to notice people, to respect everyone, regardless of their role. As he sat in the quiet room, he realized why Maria's pain had struck him so deeply. He had seen it before, in his mother's eyes, in her silent moments. The burden of carrying the weight of others without asking for anything in return. Helping Maria hadn't been charity. It had been instinct, a way to honor the woman who raised him and all the quiet heroes like her. He reached over and lit a candle in the corner of the room, a small ritual he had picked up over the years. One flame for those who had left, but never truly gone. Chapter 13. Mateo's New Chapter. Mateo stayed in California for 2 weeks. Keanu didn't just cover his stay, he made sure Mateo experienced more than hospitals and recovery. He arranged for a private tour of a film studio. He took him to a Lakers game. And one afternoon, they rode Keanu's vintage motorcycle down the Pacific Coast Highway, Mateo clinging to his back and laughing louder than he had in years. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Keanu asked Mateo a question. "What do you want to do next?" Mateo hesitated. "I used to work at a tech repair shop. I loved it. Phones, computers, anything with wires. I want to study more. I want to start something of my own." Keanu nodded. "Then let's make that happen." When Mateo returned to El Salvador, it was not as a patient, but as a man with a future. Keanu had enrolled him in an online program in computer engineering and sent him home with a refurbished laptop, study materials, and a letter of recommendation written by Keanu himself. And as Maria waved her son off at the airport, she turned to Keanu with tears in her eyes once more. But this time they were tears of joy. Chapter 14. A Tradition Begins. The following year, something new appeared on the calendar at the Reeves estate. It was marked as Family Day. Every summer, the staff would gather with their spouses, children, and friends for a celebration at the estate. There were games for the kids, live music, a barbecue pit, and of course the family table. But more than the food or fun, it became a day of connection. Maria organized most of it, putting her whole heart into the event. She made sure everyone felt welcome, from the newly hired temp workers to the veteran groundskeepers. At the center of it all stood Keanu, never the star, always the servant leader, carrying chairs, grilling hot dogs, and playing tag with the children of his staff. He would later describe it as one of the happiest days of his year. Not because of what he had, but because of what he had helped build. A home filled with dignity, unity, and love. Chapter 15. The storm approaches. Not every season is filled with light. As the next spring rolled in, a sudden storm, both literal and metaphorical, descended on the estate. One night, California was hit by an unexpected series of torrential rains and high winds. The property, though well maintained, suffered damage. The back garden was flooded. Part of the guest house roof collapsed. But that wasn't the worst of it. Within days, rumors surfaced in the media about one of Keanu's staff members being involved in an alleged leak, possibly the one who had anonymously shared the story about Maria online. A tabloid had published a piece speculating that Keanu had spent thousands to fund a housekeeper's family, adding details that only someone close to the estate could have known. The house, once so warm, now buzzed with quiet tension. Eyes turned inward, whispers replaced laughter. Trust began to falter. Keanu could feel it, the unspoken weight in every interaction. He knew something had to be done, but not with accusations or punishments. He had to rebuild what made this place so special in the first place. Chapter 16. The Meeting Under the Oak Tree. Keanu didn't call a meeting in the office or staff room. He invited everyone to the old oak tree near the back of the property, where the staff often sat for lunch during warm days. It was still muddy from the rain, but that didn't stop them from coming. Keanu stood in front of them, no podium, no microphone, just his voice and the truth. "I know trust has been shaken," he began, "and I don't care about the article. Let the world speculate. What I care about is this family. You all." He looked around at the faces, some tearful, some ashamed, some confused. "This house runs on more than labor. It runs on respect, on loyalty, on looking out for each other. If we lose that, we lose everything." He didn't demand answers. He didn't assign blame. Instead, he gave everyone a moment of silence, to think, to reflect, to remember why they were here in the first place. By the time they left that meeting, something had shifted. A few days later, an anonymous note was found tucked under Keanu's door. It read, "I never meant to cause trouble. I only shared the story because it moved me. I didn't think it would spread like that. I'm sorry." Keanu never brought it up again. He didn't have to. Chapter 17, The Comeback. With the spring storms behind them, the household slowly rebuilt, not just the physical damage, but the spirit of the home. Keanu invested in repairs for the estate, but more importantly, he brought in a wellness consultant, not for himself, but for the staff. Counseling services, financial literacy workshops, stress management resources. It was all made available. "I've worked on big movie sets where people burn out and break down," Keanu told Maria one morning. "But here, I want us to grow together." Maria had become more than just the housekeeper now. She was a leader within the household, a source of comfort and unity. The other staff began calling her Tia Maria, Aunt Maria, even those older than her. One afternoon, she approached Keanu with an idea. "What if we create a community fund? Everyone pitches in a little. You match it. And when anyone's in crisis, health, rent, family emergencies, they can apply for help." Keanu smiled. "Let's build it." And they did. The fund helped a gardener pay for his daughter's college tuition. It helped the chef's wife during maternity leave. And it kept a driver's family afloat after a car accident sidelined him for 2 months. The family table had grown roots. Chapter 18. A Letter from El Salvador. In early summer, Maria received a letter in the mail, not an email, not a text, a real handwritten letter in blue ink, mailed all the way from El Salvador. It was from Mateo. He wrote about his progress in school, how he had earned his first certification, how he had begun volunteering at a local center that taught underprivileged youth how to use computers. But the final paragraph stopped Maria in her tracks. "Mom, I want to start my own version of what Mr. Reeves gave us. I've been saving. I've already spoken to the community center. I want to call it La Mesa Familiar, the family table, a place where we help each other, no questions asked, just like he helped me, just like you helped everyone else." Maria wept when she read those words, and that night, as the staff enjoyed a quiet dinner under the stars, she shared the letter aloud. No one spoke for a full minute after she finished. Then Keanu raised his glass. "To Mateo," he said, "to the next generation of kindness." Chapter 19. Spotlight Where It Wasn't Wanted. Word of Mateo's La Mesa Familiar initiative began to quietly spread, starting within the El Salvadoran tech community. Local news outlets picked it up, inspired by the story of a young man who had been pulled back from the edge and was now lifting others. But then something unexpected happened. An American journalist working abroad published a feature about it in an international digital magazine. The piece was titled, "From Tragedy to Transformation: How One Kind Act Sparked a Movement." The article traced the origins of Mateo's journey and subtly referenced the unnamed benefactor, described only as a globally recognized actor known for his humility. It didn't take long for readers to connect the dots. Fans already familiar with Keanu's quiet acts of kindness quickly shared the article across social media. Celebrities tweeted it. Activists praised it. News shows invited Keanu for interviews. Keanu, of course, declined, but pressure mounted. Producers called his publicist. "You should take this opportunity," they said. "Let people know what you're doing." He sat with it for a few days. Then he made a decision that shocked even his closest team members. He agreed to appear on one talk show, but with a condition. Chapter 20. The Live Interview. It was a quiet Thursday night when Keanu walked onto the soundstage of a popular late-night show. Dressed in a simple blazer and dark jeans, he greeted the audience with a soft smile. They erupted into applause, not because of a new movie, but because they felt like they already knew him. Now they were about to learn something deeper. The host welcomed him warmly, then cut straight to the point. "We've been hearing some amazing things about a project in El Salvador. A young man whose life was changed, saved, really, because someone stepped in." Keanu nodded slowly. "Yes, Mateo." The host leaned forward. "Would you mind sharing what happened? The world's calling you a hero." Keanu shook his head gently. "I'm not a hero. I just listened when someone cried." The audience fell completely silent. He went on to describe, in brief and careful words, the night he heard Maria weeping. How he followed his instincts, how it led to a boy's healing, a community fund, and now a youth program in another country. "I didn't plan any of this," he said. "But sometimes when you make one small choice, one decent choice, it echoes. You don't have to be rich or famous to start that. You just have to see the people around you." When the interview ended, there were no cheers, just a standing ovation from a humbled crowd. Subscribe this channel. Thanks.